Next, Adam Burden is going to come on, and Adam is the guy who oversees much of the engineering and innovation work at Accenture. He's based in Singapore. He oversees 35,000 engineers. He's got a great presentation, so I'm going to turn it over to Adam Burden of Accenture.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Thanks. Wow. Hi, everybody. Adam Burden. It's so great to be here. I wanted to actually start by saying I'm a bit of a newbie to Techonomy, and it's been a very interesting couple of days. I have to say the diversity of thought here has been breathtaking, but what's even impressed me more is the civility of discourse. Like, there's a lot of people here that don't necessarily agree, but the fact that we can talk about it and debate it has really been incredible. So thank you for the opportunity to come here and experience this. This has really been pretty incredible for me. I have been with Accenture a long time. For 28 years, I'm our chief software engineer, and I spent a lot of time thinking about our client systems and enterprise systems and what we're doing. And I also think about some of the things, the themes that have been here around reset and restore, and especially around the governance of technology, and are we doing the right things in implementing tech for our clients? And I'm going to spend a few minutes as I go through this actually talking about that, if I can get this to work. There we go. Okay. So what I'd like to actually start with is talking a little bit about Accenture and what we do in terms of governing ourselves. And I'm a bit aligned with what Andy was just saying. I'm not sure that regulation is the answer here. I actually believe that many corporations, with a little bit of government oversight, really should self-regulate themselves. And I do believe that Accenture has actually made a lot of progress in these areas in the last several years. I mean, some of the things that we've been successful at doing we've announced a commitment to being 100% on renewable energy by 2023. We are ranked #1 on Barron's list of most sustainable companies. We also received a perfect score on Human Rights Campaign's Corporate Equality Scorecard for every year since 2008. So if you want evidence that companies can learn and that their objectives transcend shareholder returns, I do believe that we've done that. And the research that I'm going to share with you today is actually just one of many things that we try to do to actually share the things that we learn, the research that we do with others, so that they can actually benefit from it. And this research is really important because we run into companies all over the world that have really serious challenges, growth challenges. They might have security challenges or other issues. And they're struggling to survive in this digital age. Remarkably, though, that there are others that seem to do quite well, but it's a small percentage of them. And by the way, it's not just the companies that were born in the digital era. It's others. And the question that we had for ourselves was, what are they doing different? What can we do to take the lemons that are out there and kind of turn them into lemonade? And that's what I'd like to spend a few minutes talking to you about. So we believe that we have somewhat cracked the code on this. And last night I had a great conversation with Mark of Pattern Computing, and I was talking to him about hypothesis testing and other things. He said, "Yeah, Adam, you've got it wrong. You don't want to test hypothesis anymore. Let the machine tell you what the hypothesis should be." I'm not sure that that's the angle that we necessarily take in most statistical analysis, but that diversity of thought, as I said, it's inspired me maybe to think differently. But we had an idea. We had some ideas anyway of what we thought was causing some of this problem. And because this idea we thought could actually benefit really any company, any organization, a nonprofit, a government, et cetera, we thought it was important enough to do a very broad set of research and try and understand exactly why this was happening. And paradoxically, one thing that really surprised us about this too is that it didn't seem to equate to the amount of money that companies invested in technology. There are plenty of companies out there that pour enormous resources into innovation attempts and technology, but they don't actually see the kind of outcomes on there. And there are others that are relatively modest, more frugal innovators, if you will, and they achieve great returns out of it. What's causing that chasm? So we did this research, and what we found is that there are strong correlations out there to pay attention to. And what I'd like to start with is actually talking about the research that we did, because this was the largest enterprise study that Accenture's ever conducted. We gathered 1.6 million pieces of data, about 8,300 plus companies out there in 20 industries in 20 countries around the world. And we said, what separates these guys? What's different about them? And we tested our hypothesis about what makes a leader versus a laggard. And some of them didn't work, and others did. And it really helped us distinguish them. But really, what we wanted to ask ourselves question is, why are we calling them leaders versus laggards? Is there a real difference between the two about how they use tech adoption? And the answer to that is yes. There's actually a huge difference between them. The companies that are leveraging technology in these different ways, that they're embracing and adopting it differently, they see huge differences in their business performance. In fact, those leaders I was talking about, we'll call it the top 10% of that 8,300 companies. On average, they actually see twice the revenue growth of others. And this played out in every geography that we looked at, in every industry. You could have two industries that were in the same economic conditions, or two companies in the same industry, same economic conditions, same geography, peers in that, and very, very different outcomes in terms of business performance. And a lot of it seems to be correlated to how they're embracing and adopting technology. So that's some of the secret, or at least some of the data that we had out there. What did we find as we really started to look inside of that, and why were they able to actually grow faster? Well, I think that it underscores the importance of this when you start talking about money, because especially for corporations, this is hugely important. And what we found is that the revenue growth of these companies was hugely different. This actually is just illustrating a hypothetical $10 billion company. And what we did is we estimated between about 2015 and now how much revenue growth they've actually foregone. It's about $3 billion or so. And if they continue on that same trajectory, the leaders versus the laggards, if you will, a leader is going to see $20 billion in incremental growth that a laggard will actually forego. So pretty important that companies, organizations, and businesses around the world perhaps learn something from this and say, how can we embrace and adopt technology a little bit differently to actually make our performance better, to be able to serve our citizens better, to be able to actually provide better returns to shareholders, and maybe be a better corporate citizen as well, because we can actually invest some of that back into our corporate citizenship programs. So these are the things that we really came into and said, these are the barriers that people have and found that really make a difference. And the first one I'll talk about is around mastering technology adoption. And this is as much about culture as it is about the technologies themselves. And the technologies themselves are actually a bit of a false positive, because if you look at something like, I don't know, cloud, for example, cloud's pervasive across these 8,300 companies. They're all using cloud to some extent, but it's the way that they're actually using it which makes a difference. So the companies that are using the more sophisticated versions of cloud, the more sophisticated capabilities of serverless technologies or speech to text, as opposed to using cloud as a cheaper data center, that is what distinguishes the leaders from the laggards here. So different attitudes, different types of tech adoption, and you'll see a willingness to fail, a willingness to experiment, a different type of culture and mindset inside that. And again here, what was really striking in this area was it's not necessarily just the digital natives. The digital natives have problems just like this. There's a company here in the Valley that Accenture is actually helping, a known digital native, and we're actually helping them rewrite their payment system because it doesn't scale, right? You would think that they're able to do that type of thing in the tech adoption they're doing, but it doesn't. So basically the point is that they're not immune to it just because they happen to be a digital native. The second one is around architectural flexibility. And this is the area that I get most excited about as our software engineer, is that I think about how do you build systems that are really interoperable and differently constructed than before. And when we think about some of the challenges that we have right now in front of us about trust, about data inside of systems, about being able to validate stuff, if you construct systems using some of the lessons of what we call future systems in there, and you're thinking about things like boundaryless systems or more adaptable systems, that you can actually build them to actually evolve over time as opposed to need to be replaced or upgraded. And this is a very different set of thinking. And as a systems integrator, it's actually a little counterintuitive to our business if you think about it. I love the opportunity to go and screw in a new system for a client. That makes us a lot of money to do that. But it's actually the wrong kind of thinking for today, because you can't afford to take the kind of outage necessary to install a new SAP system just to fix something. You need something that's much more evolutionary in nature. So an architectural flexibility really can give you that. And the final one that we feel very passionate about is really rethinking about how you create seamless human experiences. And that, of course, has to do with trust. Do the humans trust the information that they're seeing? Is the data actually trusted? If it's corporate data, can I make good decisions off of it? It also has to do with how you're taking advantage of different types of user interfaces. So yesterday, Mark from Adobe was talking about voice. And I feel very strongly about this. And I'll say that we believe at Accenture that AI is actually the new UI. You're going to find that artificial intelligence very rapidly is going to change the way that we interact and interface with different types of technology around us. And screens, is it the end of screens? Probably not, because screens are a great and effective way to get information, but it's going to be a very different way of interacting in the future. The companies who have already started to embrace this type of thing, they're building these future systems, they're experimenting with newer technologies, they're the ones that are going to be the leaders of tomorrow. So when we think about enterprise systems that are out there, we believe that it's time for a bit of a hard reset out there. Even if it's something that doesn't necessarily align with what Accenture's business model has been for a long time about doing big systems integration projects, we think that for the pace of technology change that's out there, for the types of problems that we've got with governance and technology adoption, you really have to think about with a hard reset that we have to do on enterprise systems to change the way that they perform for our clients and the outcomes that they actually deliver. And when we categorize this, what does a future system actually look like? We think there's three. We think there's three things that people need to look at. The first, we believe that they need to be boundaryless. This is an important one because the distinctions between infrastructure and code and databases and applications, those things that used to be nicely layered in a good monolithic system, they're gone. They don't exist anymore. And if the monolith is controlling your enterprise, it's actually holding you back and handicapping what your future capabilities are. So we believe very strongly in this concept of boundaryless. For example, taking things that are events or data in the enterprise and actually publishing them out. Instead of making them messages between systems, sharing them so that anybody can subscribe to those things. Creating data lakes so you can do artificial intelligence capabilities on it. Those are really important capabilities, and boundaryless systems embrace exactly that. The second one is around being adaptable. And yesterday, Colin from GE was talking about how AI needs to be humble. And that really resonated with me because that is the epicenter of what an adaptable system is supposed to do. It should constantly be learning from the user environment and the feedback loop that it's actually getting and changing itself, changing its behavior. And it can be as simple as making the user interface more pleasing to someone, making them more efficient in what they do, or it could be something as sophisticated as keeping your airplane engines running a little bit longer and people safe up in the sky. Adaptable systems do exactly that. And the future leaders, or the leaders that are out there, they are definitely building their future systems in that way. And then finally, I'll just touch on the last characteristic here for a second of radically human. This is really thinking about the types of ways that we've built systems in the past. We can't continue that. And everybody in here is actually a victim of this, and I see several of you of being a victim of it right now. You're using a keyboard that was laid out in the 1800s to actually slow people down from typing too fast, right? Does that make sense anymore? It doesn't make sense. We need to be thinking about building systems around people rather than taking people and making them work around systems. And radically human is just about that sort of reset, that hard reset, and rethinking about how we're building them. And you'll find that the leaders of tomorrow, they are doing exactly that. They're thinking about how do they make AI the new UI. So that's it. That's what I wanted to share with you about future systems. I wanted to offer that there is some optimism. There are companies and outfits out there that are looking at what do we need to do to better govern ourselves? What type of information can we share to make the world a better place and to help people build future systems and make them operate a little bit better? And I probably have about maybe a minute for a question if someone has one. Does anyone have a question? Great.
I'm wondering if you can name some companies that have nailed all three of those conditions.
Yeah. So first of all, our survey was was blind because we wanted people to answer very honestly when they were giving some of this. But there are definitely some outfits out there that we think have done this, and they're not necessarily the ones that you would think of and say, hey, these are born in the cloud type companies. Of course, they've got it right. But companies that even reinvested themselves, if you look at like Microsoft has done an incredible job of taking their enterprise IT systems, so the systems that run their back office, and transforming them to actually run so much better by embracing some of these systems of boundaryless, or some of these principles of boundaryless, adaptable, and radically human. And there's lots of others around the world that we admire. Cathay Pacific is another one that we think very highly of. They really have rethought how do they embrace technology, how do they embrace disruptive technology for innovation in their enterprise. As I go around the world, I come up with many examples of this. But honestly, it's only a fraction of the total of that 8,300 that we look at. Anything else? So I'll just ask one question I always get whenever I give this presentation, which is around talent, and I'll close on that. So talent, the talent equation, we get so many questions about, well, what skills do I need to be more successful as an enterprise in the future? And the question is the wrong question to be asking. The question that you should be asking, and the question and what we see, the principles that these organizations, these high performers, the ones that are growing their revenue growth rate higher or 2x what the others are, what they're asking about their future talent is, what is their appetite and their hunger to learn? And it really transforms kind of taking the legacy workforce that you have and how do you reskill them to be more successful by thinking about how do we give new opportunities and create enthusiasm and excitement for learning differently. And that might be experiential learning like Amazon Deep Bracer, if anybody's run into that type of thing before. It can really inspire a workforce and help them actually learn things differently and create this culture of continuous learning, because we find that element of this that will make or break anyone. You can invest and be doing all these other things correctly, but having the talent behind it is super important as well. So that's it. Thank you guys so much. Please do pick up a copy of our Future Systems report. There's a ton of them that's around, or you can go to the Accenture website and grab it as well. Thanks again.